Now, I was going to set up my brush palette with you guys so you could see sort of, if you notice, I have my page backwards. People say I use my tools and subtools over here. Since I do all the changing and such, I prefer to have my brush palettes and stuff over here. So if it looks a little different than your standard setup, it's just I've switched these two sides. The palettes that I keep up all the time are my transform, brush, stroke, and then Z plugins. One of the things I hear constantly about is how intimidating this interface is, and trust me, I've felt it as well. But 90% of this stuff is really for gaming or film, like the UVs and some of the quick tools that they have that we'll go over. UVs and stuff like that are important, but really I'm a sculptor. I use the sculpture tools, and I don't use 80% of this program. So much of it is really for that transfer into gaming and film and graphics. Like, I don't render anything. This is a big debate in the jewelry world, is rendering. I don't render. I think rendering's bad because no matter how good or how bad your rendering is, it's not what the client is actually going to receive. And so if you have the most beautiful rendering in the world and you polish it off, they're going to go, well, why is this? Where I literally take screen caps from this, and I use in the blue, I like the blue material a lot because you can see detail. And some of the other materials don't show the depth or show too much depth. I found that this blue material, it's the MAH Dirty Blue, it is actually pretty realistic about visual depth. So when you're carving, like this right here, these are too shallow. Those will buff out in a heartbeat. I have a bunch of bands, and we'll go through and talk about them in a minute, kind of to show you some processes and what I learned while I was doing these. So first thing, I always use Smooth Stronger because Smooth just really doesn't move enough material. I am the master of putting things on and taking them off, and putting them on and taking them off. You'll see this and you'll go, why don't you have a plan for anything? And I also have given up sketching. I just come in, I have some rough images, and I do them in the machine. I do rough blockouts, bring them over and play. And that's the beauty of GoZ. It allows me to go back and forth between the two programs and really, you can tune your geometry that way much better than trying to do it just in here. Then I use the Dan Standard and the, where is it? It's Orbs. Oh, there it is. An Orb Crack. Both of these are very good because when you actually put a line in with it, they penetrate to a depth that is something that's actually there. So then I use our move tools. Now move topological, I usually leave out of my palette. Now there's a way that you can set up a custom palette so you don't have to redo this every time, and I've tried to do it twice and it never saved. So I haven't talked to Paul yet, but as soon as I learn, I'll share it with you because I crash a lot and I have to redo this constantly. And then I'll use FormSoft, which is very good for broad general lines. You'll see how I use it. I lay in weights with it. And then clay tubes. I like clay tubes and clay buildup a lot. They leave nice square surfaces. They're good lines. There's a clarity to them that when you're laying strokes down, you can start to build rhythms and stuff, and it's very nice. Now, flatten H flatten, polish C, M polish, and then this gentleman's brushes I just found. He's a Japanese designer. He does a lot of toys. I think he was on Top Shelf a couple weeks ago at ZBrush Forum, and I have his links as well. These are very good brushes. They're really nice hard surfacing, and his fold brushes are beautiful. So flatten, general flattening. H polish is a sharper polish. Polish C is a soft polish and a slight scoop, and polish M is like a half round. So you'll wind up polishing, because even as organic as we get, we need hard edge surfacing. So when you start to lose generations in either growing or then in turn molding and casting, you lose generational detail. So you want as sharp and rigid as detail as you can get. And so I tend to polish up edges. This SK polish is beautiful. It gives you a really nice flat surface, and however he built it, it sharpens the edge as you go along, so it's a really good defining brush. His cloth brush, and where's the slash? These are good. He just has really nice detail brushes. The cloth brush does big fold, like larger areas, and it drags the detail from up and under. The SK slash is a slashing brush, so it starts soft, gets heavy, and then the crack is just a nice, or a carve is just a nice clean V. It's a good thing. Then I use trim front, planer flatten, planner flatten, planner. And rake. Where's rake? So that's my basic palette that I use, and like there are all kinds of different things that if you're doing something specific that I will use different brushes, but that's usually where I start. You know, if you're doing, if you're projecting details to a surface, if you're doing multiple metal pieces and stuff, the morph projection brush, or what is it, move to?
Match move? Or, yeah, matchmaker.
Yeah, that one. Matchmaker. Thank you. This brush I'll use when you're applying different surfaces. You want things to fit together well, but you don't do that all the time, so there's no point in having it. You know, these the MAH cuts. I have their website as well. He or they, I'm not really sure. They do some very beautiful brushes, and also they do a lot of really nice materials. Come on, you. Where's the other one? Being dyslexic and having this many brushes, they all look the same. It's like, I don't know. Now here's the other thing that I do, and I don't know that necessarily on some of these that it makes a huge difference, but what you run into often when you start using the stroke brushes is they'll chatter, and they're not smooth. There's just like a little repetitive, like a hiccup in them. And so I literally change, I go to Lazy Mouse, I change the lazy step to 0.03, and it just gives you a much nicer stroke, because here, let's put this to 0.25, where was that? And this model has no geometry. And you can see where you get that chatter or the stutter. And if you go here, you'll see it's gone. And your edges just become nice. This isn't, excuse me, this isn't a very big, or the model's fairly low geometry, so you still get this chatter edge. That's the geometry. That's not the brush. But you can see the difference between the two. So I literally, anything that I'm going to use as a stroking brush, I go back up here and I change it to 0.03. And, you know, for the stem standard and the orb cracks and stuff, I don't know if it really makes that huge a difference, but, you know, you can see that there's no chattering. You can see how clean that is. And that's, as we go on and as you play with them, you'll start to know the difference between why I have so many different slash brushes. You can see how the profile of each one is very different, and they're very useful. See how that one kind of bites and doesn't bite. These will become very, very helpful when you start to know the look you want and which brush does it. You know, I really wish they have. Where's this brush? I wish this brush worked. I don't know enough about. I mean, it has this really nice fold. Anyone out there who's really good at making brushes, make that smooth, and I will be super happy. So, because if you could use that on things exactly like this, you could see where you could start to really develop those divisions simply. But it's just a messy brush. I don't find that if you hit it with smooth, it'll go back to a nice texture. But if you already have a bunch of detail and you're just trying to groove it in, it's not very useful. I know. There we go. Once again, okay, so that's my brush palette. The next thing I'll show you is here. So there is, I think we might already be calibrated. Mine might already be done. So your transpose tool here, yeah, mine's already calibrated. If you'll notice these ticks, there is no scale referencing in ZBrush other than this and in 3D Print Exporter, update size ratios. Now, the one thing you have to do is start an inch, update size ratio, then go to millimeters. Well, I guess some of you might work in inches. I don't. And then update it. And this is the sizing. And I've done quite a bit of back and forth between Modo. And Modo has very exacting scale. So we know that's that. We go here. This tells me what the scale reference is. So, and this is how, you know, you do your ring sizing and such. But this is the scale of the part. So that's how I know that when we come back to ZBrush, I have parts, these are the same. So ZBrush has a very accurate scaling, or, you know, it functions very accurately, but its internal system is funny. In Modo, I have to work in meters, and then when we import it back in, they're millimeters in ZBrush. So it's like metric with a decimal off is the internal scaling for ZBrush. So I don't know if you're creating models in other programs, if that is an issue, since all my base blockup stuff is done in Matrix or in Modo. Out of Matrix, we'll import some models next week, and I'll do a little homework beforehand just to make sure there isn't a scaling differential between those two programs, since that's going to be the one that most of you do. Now, what you have to do, preferences, transpose units. And unit scale, minor ticks, major ticks. Unit scale is 1, minor ticks is 10, major ticks is 1. And this is where you set your scale. Now what I had is I made a 1 millimeter calibration block. Should just come in. And I made this in Moto, so it's to scale. Take your transpose tool. Oops, sorry guys. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So it's 1 millimeter with 10 divisions in it. And we go back to preferencing, and you set units, and it will set that distance as its scale units. Since mine's already done, it's already right. Yours probably won't look like this, but if you get, see its primary geometry, really simple, that way it'll snap at these 2 points. And I can give you guys this block if you want. Snap it, set set units, and now this is a functioning ruler. And you know, it's really good as you're going through, and you just need to check sizing and such. Now you have an internal scale. The other thing that you all will get is I have a breakdown of, oh, that was just for the, where are my shapes? Okay, well, this is the ZPR. I guess I just took the 3 pictures so it made a reference and it just kept those. I have a bunch of basic stone shapes, and one of the forms that I will have for you shows you the basic stone shapes and dimensions by carat. So it'll tell you, oh, this is a 4-carat stone because it's 8 millimeters by 4 millimeters by 2 millimeters deep. And so that way you can have a rough breakdown of your stones. If I open the ZPR, I'll wipe all this out. So sorry my ZTL didn't come in. This is an older stone sizes, but you'll see it's 2 carats, 1.5, 1 carat, and these are your round diamond shapes. So you'll get all these, which are to scale. So if you want to build something around it, you click on it, and you know that that is actually 1 carat. The thing that, well, actually that's half carat, but the thing that I find a lot of people get really tied up in thicknesses, and they're like, oh, well, you know, rings have to be 3 millimeters thick and blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, for the most part, a lot of that's true, and every bench jeweler in the world is going to scream and yell at me because I truly believe design things that are beautiful, and you can sit down with professionals and make things happen. And when you deal with CAD people who came out of bench jewelry, a lot of the old things that they know, which are very, very useful, don't get me wrong, I get it every day from bench jewelers. They hate me because I'm like, well, at least try it, you know. With the modern technology and some of the casting stuff, it's amazing how much detail you can get. I'll just give you a quick example here.